Big corporations are focused on profits. Politicians, on elections. If you are serious about governments and big corporations doing their job, you might want to explore what the Universal 7 governance and management system has to offer. This is a presentation of Universal 7, Governance and Management. Profitable, viable and sustainable. A cybernetic management approach. Stafford Beer's viable system model never became fashionable during his lifetime. Why? Because people stuck in the Newtonian paradigm found it hard to understand. They refused to adopt a better and more efficient language to deal with the complexity of the modern world. After Stafford's death almost 20 years ago, things have changed. The world has changed. Maybe it is time for people to change how they look at the world. Some say even the climate has changed. The fact is that the world is a mess, and will continue to get worse if governments, whatever their size and color, do not adopt the gist of Stafford's teachings. Large corporations do not do any better. They do not have managers. Most companies are run by authoritarian boards and CEOs, so they too should pay attention. Meanwhile, the list of worldwide problems keeps getting not just longer, but fatter, more complex too. In an effort to simplify the VSM's language, I created the Universal 7, Governance and Management System. It transfers the main features of the VSM to a more familiar input-output system managers can grasp easily. In this video, I will use the VSM U7 to explain the differences between profitable, viable and sustainable. Profitable applies to what Stafford calls the system, operation or process and its management. What you would normally call the legal person corporation. In this graphic, I present the system with its management, using the Universal 7 model. Generally speaking, the thinkers are on top, and the doers are in the bottom. Profits had a big influence on developing a clockwork mentality, a corporation as a big machine. The Toyota Lean production system is a good example of how to optimize profits. Materials are handled just in time, workers know exactly what they have to do. Everything runs perfectly, according to schedule. Viable is defined as capable of an independent existence. Viability is a criteria that applies to a corporation together with its relevant environment. Beer's viable system model anticipated the need to draw a fuzzy border well outside the corporation to include its investors, bankers, suppliers and clients or customers. Stafford Beer called this border fuzzy because it is constantly changing. It even expands or contracts, depending on the number of participants carrying out transactions with the corporation. For instance, financial sources and material sources, such as machinery providers and even labor sources, are all part of the relevant environment. And therefore, they are all an integral part of the corporation, considered as a viable system. Suppliers and customers are attached by contracts, and not part of the structural legal corporation. The relevant environment is needed to transform the corporation into a viable system. Viability is therefore the product of an equilibrium between input and output, where profits from the operation are certainly important, but so too are perdurable and trustworthy relationships with suppliers and clients. They are all an indispensable part of the viable corporation. Here we see how this input-out representation makes it easy to understand the circular nature of the money flow. Corporations and governments share many features with other living vortices, such as cells and human beings. They have something else in common: they are attractors. They attract what they need and reject what they don't need. Modern customer relationship management or CRM technologies serve to exemplify what Stafford meant by viability. Stafford was a prophet and an enabler of modern CRM systems. He was the first to propose that a business not only needs to be profitable, but also viable. When speaking of software products, the users are an invaluable asset that lies outside the corporation, but is an integral part of the viable corporation. Consider the contribution of users to the development and fine-tuning of an app for an iPhone. Apple has to take good care of them, they are part of the company. Sustainability refers to the overall larger environment, where the viable system exists, where government plays the most important role. This overall larger environment includes laws and regulations and ultimately, the rules of ethical and moral behavior. It also includes society in general and the economic and cultural environment. What is sustainable for some may not be appreciated as such by others. This book by Angela Espinosa and John Walker, both followers of Stafford Beer's ideas, explains this in detail. Sustainability is found outside the fuzzy borders of viability. Sustainability is long-term viability, and therefore requires a certain stability with the overall environment. Prediction is not always available to the corporation. A corporation may be profitable and viable, because the knowledge that envisioned it had some predictive power. However, to attain sustainability, a corporation depends on factors that are not within its control domain. Changes in the law and public policy are not always predictable. You can persuade a bank to lend you money, or motivate a supplier to do business, but sustainability means having to adapt to situations that are out of your control. Examples are the interplay of environmental regulations, banking rules, safety requirements, and government policies. Large-scale economic considerations have a repercussion on sustainability. When you apply the sustainability criteria to a whole nation, the same logic applies. The territory becomes the relevant environment for the nation-state. A nation is viable if it can organize internally to produce the goods and services its people need. When some international commerce is needed to fill in the production gaps, then the nation-state in question acts as a corporation, doing commercial transactions with foreign corporations. It is acting in a private capacity, as just another business corporation. Its viability borders expand beyond the territory to include those suppliers and customers. Nation-states that are not self-sufficient, and depend on loans, subsidies or grants, do not qualify as viable systems. For instance, Joe Biden's policies are making the oil and gas industry in the United States not sustainable, and therefore non-viable. However, they are also making them more profitable, for now. They are making the Middle East countries, and Russia, more profitable, viable and sustainable. During the COVID crisis, the United States came to realize that much of its medical supplies come from China. Apparently, it was more profitable for America to import them than produce them. However, is this a sustainable arrangement? What if relations with China deteriorate? The graphic shows what a non-sustainable solution means right now. The U7 model and its parent viable system model have the language to allow us to examine these important value-ridden and strategic decisions. It allows us to stop and think the future consequences and long-term risks of our current decisions. Universal 7 and the viable system model are thinking tools. They help you think better, to see the whole picture and make your own about what is going on. Now go change the world.